Welcome back to the channel, guys. SES Vince here, joined once again with Basharat. How's it going, man?
It's going well, Vince. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. I'm
Getting
in
some
my
life things out of the way, I heard. So
yeah,
getting
yeah,
yeah,
man. We got some moving done. Moved in
good.
with my fiance. Gonna get married in about 2 months.
Congrats.
Yeah, in about 2 months. Thanks. Got some things going. That's why we've been a little inconsistent with like the basketball content. But however, NBA All Star right around the corner, February 12th, 8th. 8th is the
Well,
deadline.
yeah, 8th is the
Yeah.
deadline. 12th is the game. Yeah.
Okay. There you go. There. So we got some NBA All Star to talk. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the first episode you actually did on Straight Talk was NBA All Star Reserve predictions.
Yep. That's
So
actually exactly what we. Yeah, this is the first time we ever did a
yeah,
podcast together. Is the
this
same
is
topic? Yeah.
2 years now.
Yeah.
Crazy,
Right.
right? It's
It's nuts.
crazy.
It's nuts.
So we won't waste too much time, Bosch. We're gonna make this a small, little, like compact episode. Let's talk about the NBA All Star starters that were announced on TNT this past Thursday. Then give our thoughts on that, and then we'll give our own reserves, our own personal reserves, because the actual reserves will be announced by the time you watch this episode, or maybe this is your little pregame before you actually watch the reserves get announced.
Right, because
So
from our perspective, we're recording on Wednesday, and the reserves get announced on Thursday,
yes.
which is tomorrow on TNT.
Yeah, we're recording this Wednesday evening. So let's get started with the West. We got the captain leading off with the forwards, LeBron James of the LA Lakers. No surprise there, getting the fan votes. The former two-time MVP and NBA champion Nikola Jokic, Kevin Durant of the Phoenix Suns, Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks, and first-time starter Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with because I think these were the correct picks. I might have quibbled a bit with whether KD or LeBron, that sort of thing, but
Right.
like close enough that you can't really say it's a bad pick. But I definitely think Shea and Luka were the clear guards, and
Yes.
it's surprising because you have established Hall of Fame names like Curry, who's still performing at
Hmm.
All-Star levels. So it's kind of surprising that um, you actually managed to get a newbie from Oklahoma City, not even from a big market, to become the starter over somebody like that. So I think
It's
it
it's
worked out
kind
well.
of it's kind of hard to like just kind of like deny how good the Thunder actually are. Not only is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander leading
Yeah,
the way as the number one dude, but you also got Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams. You got all the guys over there in OKC, doing good things. There's a few teams on the West that are so excited to
and
watch.
they've just been so good at the top of the standings too.
They
Like
have. They have. So that's the West reserves. Like you said, I mean, starters. The only thing that's surprising, this is the first time Steph Curry that hasn't made an All Star starter game
yeah,
with him being healthy. The only
right,
times he's missed being a starter in the All Star game is due to injury. He's
right.
been a captain for Christ's sake. But then again, the Warriors are doing so bad, aren't they? Yeah, they're like 12th in the Western Conference
We'll
right
get
now.
into this when we talk about reserves because it's a bloodbath to make the Western Conference All Stars, given how good the
Hmm.
West is through the top and the middle and into like even the edge of the play-in. And it's not just the teams, but the individuals who are
Oh yeah,
carrying these teams. Because some teams you would argue, well, they don't deserve an All Star. Some teams you would say deserve multiples based on their record, but there are just so many. I mean, we had two players drop 70 points in the past week. And if you
dude.
count those, we had like four guys drop 60 plus. And that's just from an offensive perspective. Let's not even discuss the fact that Rudy Gobert is back to like a clear
Oh,
defensive player of the
100%.
year
He's got the Timberwolves sitting number one in the Western Conference.
and the best defense by far. And it's
100%.
it's basically what they envisioned when they traded for him that we talked about before last year.
It's working. All right. So we'll save the reserves talk of Western Conference. Let's go to the Eastern Conference All Star starters. We have the captain for the East, Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Milwaukee Bucks. No surprise there. Reigning MVP Joel Embiid from the 76ers. Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics. No surprise there. These are like the top three forwards or front court guys in the Eastern Conference. I think it
Yeah.
was last year or was it 2 years ago where we were having like a debate of Kevin Durant taking one of these guys' spots. But, he moved over to the West, so
Right.
clear things for them.
Might have
Damian
cleared things up
Lillard,
too much in the East.
yeah. Damian Lillard made the All-Star game starter list. We'll talk about Damian Lillard. Tyrese Halliburton,
Again,
first time starter.
another guy from a small market who's a young player, who's
Yes.
a clear like all-star starting level guard, and a little positively surprising, in a good way that he actually got that nod.
I love to see it. I love Halliburton. I love his game. He's great watch whenever he's matched up with the Chicago Bulls and they get to actually watch him from start to finish. I was a fan of his back in the day when he was in Sacramento. I'm a big Kings fan, so I support any former Kings players.
Of course.
And the All-Star game is in Indiana. It's fitting. Shout out to Indiana fans getting their man to start.
Right, that's what I was going to get to. It's an additional pleasant surprise that you always like to have somebody from the local market to start in the All-Star game. It's a nice touch, but it's especially so when the guy's clearly deserving. Just worked out perfectly.
100%. Like the only thing here is I would say I don't think Damian Lillard deserves to start. There's another man, we'll mention him once we get into our reserves, that I believe deserves to start over him. But, Damian Lillard is a big name. It's the first time he's actually started an All-Star game, so it's nice to have that in his, bucket list.
Yeah, because, again, he's been in the West where it was, another bloodbath at guard, especially, for the last decade.
All right, yeah. So let's not waste any time. We're going to get into our reserves, and what we're going to do is we're going to alternate between Basharat and myself. I'll let Basharat start off first, and then I'll kick things off with the Western reserves, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth. If he has the same guy, I'll say why I got the same guy. But yeah, kick us off, Bosh.
All right, we starting in the West?
East. We'll go East.
The West is going to require
East is easier.
Yeah, so let's go with my first, guard selection here. I did my full breakdown. So if anybody actually ever listened to that first podcast I was ever on, I did the full breakdown with all the stats for all the different selections on both East and West. So it's a lot of info. I won't deluge you with all the info, but give you some idea of I didn't just go with, gut and eye test only. I used the eye test, obviously, and from what we know. And then I went to separation with stats and try to figure out, okay, is there really a case for one of these players to be above another beyond the eye test, beyond record, et cetera.
Right. So we got the 2 guard spots. We got the 3 front court, and we got the 2 wild cards.
So do you want me to go exactly? It's
whichever way you want to go with it. Whichever way.
7 reserves, 2 guards, 3 front court, 2 wild cards that can be any position. So I can do both guards or just one at a time. What do you want?
Let's just do one at a time.
Start off with I'll go Jalen Brunson then as the first pick.
I think that's the easiest one.
Yeah, I mean, there are other players we'll get to. I think Brunson, not only are the Knicks really good, Brunson is is the offensive engine. We thought he should have made it last year. I believe Julius Randle made it over him last year.
He did.
And if you look at right now, some of the differentiators here, he's +8 in net rating. Among the players I was considering, only the front court spots or some of the players with a lot less usage, like Derek White, had a higher net rating than that. He was tied with Donovan Mitchell. His usage is insane. He's 32.3% usage rate, is the highest of any All-Star reserve in any position that I had considered. And usage rate, if you're not familiar, is basically how many possessions they are used up with a player taking a shot, getting an assist, or having a turnover. Same thing, net rating it's similar to plus minus. Plus minus is just an overall accumulation of, how many points did your team score versus the other team while you were on the floor in total. Net rating is a little bit more refined in that it's per 100 possessions. So your offensive rating per 100 possessions while you're on the floor minus your defensive rating, which you want to be lower to keep the other team, with a lower score. Right. And that gives you your overall net rating. It's adjusted for 100 possessions, so it accounts for things like pace, minutes played, stuff like that. So Brunson's net rating +8, excellent. He's scoring almost 27 points a game. There's just not much to complain. He's played pretty much every game. He's 46 games. So I don't know. The Knicks are flying. They're on a winning streak right now. There's not
Yeah.
much more to say from my end.
I think the last time 10 games have been 9-1, so
Yeah,
it's been a while. So yeah, I actually have Jalen Brunson as my first reserve for the Eastern Conference All Stars. He's who I would have had in the All Star guard starting alongside Tyrese Halliburton. I think
that's a good
both.
point. I should have made that point. I mean, I think it's fine for Dame to start, considering his overall track record. That he's still a good player, like an all-star level player this year.
Yes,
And at the end of the year, these numbers may be a little different. Then he'll probably won't be viewed as much of a discrepancy. There's always that possibility. And again, he's really good. But I also would have thought Jalen Brunson deserved it just based on the first
I
half.
I thought he deserved it a little bit more for sure. With Damian Lillard struggling a little bit with Giannis and the Bucks, they've had their woes for sure. But I don't know, man. Like, it's something about Knicks fans, and I'm not trying to take a shot at Knicks fans. They always catch a stray here on the show whenever we're talking. But it's like you would think them being one of the biggest markets in the entire country, they would get one, if not both of their guys to be higher up in the All-Star votes.
And they're winning. Like, they should be
Yeah.
really happy about their team. And you know how like delusionally ecstatic Knicks fans get with even the slightest bit of winning. It is really weird that Brunson didn't do better.
Dropping the ball on Brunson. Brunson
Yeah.
should have started.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got Brunson as well. So I'll check him off of my list. I'll stay with the guards, and I'm gonna go in my other guard here. I don't know where you have this individual. He might be one of your wild cards or not. But I got Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I felt like I needed someone from the Cleveland Cavaliers to be represented in this game. They're playing very well. They're a solid team. It's either him or Jared Allen. They've been riddled with injuries this year. Donovan Mitchell is still an all-star. He kills the Bulls every single time he plays against them. So yeah, I kind of just went with Donovan Mitchell, man. I felt like he was a safe pick. And there's another guard out there. There's a few guards out there, but between all of them, when I started weighing all the top players in each team in the Eastern Conference, Donovan Mitchell just kind of stood at heads and shoulders over all of them almost.
Yeah, it was very close for me. I went with Maxey, but Mitchell made my wild card. So, and it was a very, very close call because, like you said, I mean, going back to the stats I was at before, actually, I mixed up Brunson and Mitchell's usage. Brunson's right about at 30, Mitchell's at 32, so he's got the highest usage.
There you go.
Yeah, so especially
that makes sense.
Yeah, with Darius Garland out, I mean, one of the really impressive things about the Cavs in general and Mitchell in particular is how they have lost multiple, not just rotation players, but starters, with Mobley out for extended periods of time, Darius Garland out for a very, very long time. They've had their reserves in and out. They've had Jared Allen out now. I mean, and yet they keep winning. I mean, they beat the Bulls. They just keep winning, and they're climbing up the standings. And Mitchell's a big part of that. I think he had a bit of a shakier start to the year, but man, has he rounded into form since everybody went down. Again, also a +8 net rating, both him and Brunson. Again, these guys he's scoring almost 28 points a game. Mm-hmm. His plus minus is nearly 10. So yeah, no complaints here. I think Maxey and Mitchell both very close.
Okay, so do you want to make a case for Maxey? Because I also do have him on my list as well. It was either Donovan Mitchell or Maxey as the guard spot, and then the other would get the wild card. But we both have three guys straight. So you want to make your case for Maxey?
Sure, I'll go right ahead. Maxey also has an over 10 plus minus. His usage rate is at 27%. That's with like the MVP frontrunner Joel Embiid on his team. Mm-hmm. So it's really impressive. Philly's rise in the standings, despite having lost James Harden from last year's team and not really replaced him with the star level player. They've replaced him with role players. And Maxey has taken on the burden of, not just ball handling throughout the game, but in crunch time, being the lead decision maker at guard, and not just throwing it to Embiid, but he often has the ball in his hands with the decision of what to do in those. And when they do have the rare crunch time moments, they've also had a lot of blowout games. So +6 net rating, very good. His shooting percentages have improved. I mean, his true shooting's at almost 58%. Some of these numbers I'm talking about, true shooting kind of takes into account the fact that 3-pointers count more than twos, but also like it takes free throws into account, which are a very efficient shot. Other shooting percentages don't take that into account. And there's effective field goal percentage, which doesn't account for free throws, but does weight threes higher than twos. And this kind
Right.
of gives the guards a better percentage because they take more of those outside shots, especially compared to front court players. So it's a better way to evaluate them overall, not just field goal percentage, which doesn't really take into account the
Yeah,
value of
no.
the points.
Yeah, no, it's because sometimes you can't just take field goal percentage fully
Right.
into account because crunch time shots, like you're taking shots at the end of the shot clock. Maybe you're trying to heave a shot at the end of a buzzer at the
Yeah.
end of the quarter. So they can be a little deceiving.
Yeah. So overall, accounting for the amount of threes you take, which are shot at a lower percentage, but scoring more, he's doing very well. Again, it's a little bit lower, but not by much. It's just bare percentage points behind Donovan Mitchell in both
Yeah.
effective field goal percentage and true shooting. Again, Philly's winning. I don't think you can really argue with this. Maxi's been spectacular. He's been able to shake his limitations when he came into the league. He's an
Hmm.
outside shooter now, both on with the ball or on spot ups. He can penetrate. He has a little floater. He changes speed. He's an excellent guard. I think he's a clear all-star.
Oh yeah, he's someone that if it wasn't for Kobe White, and my Bulls bias, I would be voting for him as most improved player this year because
Yeah,
he's really taken.
he's probably still like the front runner overall. Like if you
Yeah,
look at nationwide, how
he
people consider.
probably is. He's been playing fantastic. Kobe White has done a little bit of what he's been doing, but Terrence Maxey has been doing it on a whole other level, and he deserves to get that nod. The
Yep.
76ers are currently the fifth, but they're only half a game back from the Cavaliers, and the only one game back from the Knicks in the seven for the third seed, and they were the third seed for the longest time there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you. I got Maxey as well. So I'm going to take you over to the front court, and I feel like this is a pretty much a lock for your conclusion. In the front court, I got Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. I think it's a lock that he gets in there. After you get a few All Star nods, you just kind of get like the benefit of the doubt. Like back in the day, you'd get like a Kyle Lowry, a DeMar DeRozan. Joe Johnson is a famous, notorious like All Star player, even though sometimes he didn't play like an All Star that particular season. But I got Jaylen Brown. He's the second head of that double-headed snake over there in Boston. Granted, I do want to give a bit of a shout out to Derek White. I feel like if it wasn't for Derek White, they wouldn't be where they are currently. But Jaylen Brown is a perfect selection and an easy one for the All-Star reserves in the Eastern Conference.
So I don't have Jaylen Brown on my team.
Really?
Yeah, because I do think you're right. He'll probably get it based on what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've been an all-star, you're generally considered to be an all-star if it's close, like against someone who hasn't been. But so I would go to my forward, but let's just break this down because I do
Yeah.
have Derek White as my other wild card.
Okay.
So I'll just break it down between the two of them. Now, Jaylen Brown obviously has a much higher usage percentage. He has the ball more, he shoots more, he scores more. But when you look at the Celtics are again the best team in the league, or second best in the league, best in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Let's go a little deeper though into how they've been winning, and I do give a big nod. If your usage percentage is higher, you're going to be a little less efficient. You are handling the ball and making decisions more often. But Derek White's defense and his offense together has been really key for the Celtics. It's been even more important than Drew Holiday, who I think that's kind of the spot that Derek White, in my mind, has taken this year.
He has.
Right where Drew was last year or the year before for us with Milwaukee. That's who Derek White is this year. And net rating, Jaylen Brown overall -1. That doesn't mean he's a bad player. It just means that in his minutes on the floor, maybe he goes up against more starters more often, or depending on who's on the team with him on the floor for the Celtics, that could affect their net rating also. But Derek White's a +10. That's a big difference. He doesn't play that many fewer. The minutes are nearly identical. They also both play like 30 some minutes. So he's a starter. They're playing nearly identical minutes. He does have, about 8 points fewer usage. He's at about 20%, whereas Jaylen Brown is like 28. But again, he's a plus 10 in net rating. His true shooting percentage is 61, and effective field goal is 57.1. That is a little easier when you're taking
Hmm.
fewer shots, but it's not that much fewer. He's scoring 16 points a game. And I think the Celtics defense is a big key, and limiting turnovers and that sort of stuff that Derek White does, that kind of Jaylen Brown does still struggle with.
Hmm.
I think it's not into, I think it's really close. And I don't think you would be wrong to say Jaylen Brown over Derek
Right.
White. I just feel like the season Derek White is having, given where the Celtics are and how much he's impacted winning, again, a plus 10 net rating is amazing for
What
someone.
if they all three of them get in? What if it's a combination Jalen, Tatum, and Derek White?
Not a bad pick. I have a different Celtic in there. So we'll get to that.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had Jalen Brown. Who's your other guy? Who's your other front court guy? We
Why don't
got
we just
three.
go to the other Celtic then that I have in the front court? And I have Porzingis. That is,
Really
yes.
interesting.
I think
Go ahead.
Kristaps made the team last year with the Wizards too, didn't he? I could be wrong.
No,
He had a case. He had a case.
he had a case for it. I don't think
Uh,
he actually ultimately made it at the end.
yeah, I'm not sure if he ultimately made it or not either. But here's where I'm going to go to. Again, you know, games wise, he's played fewer, so I could see that being a case to keep him off. But when we get to some of the other players, he hasn't played that much fewer than other players who are going to make the team, and he's played in 34 games. By the end of the year, you know, he should be up there in games played right around 70. I think that would be fine to get anybody 65 games or over as an all-star. That's totally fine. And if you look at his impact, like, oh my God, his scoring percentage. So he's scoring about 20 points a game. His usage is 24%, so not much lower than Jaylen Brown. His plus minus is plus 17. He is affecting the game on defense and offense very drastically for the
Yeah.
Celtics. So he's been able to do what Gallus had hoped he would do for them a couple of years ago. But he's doing it in Boston. Yes, it is easier when you have, you know, several high caliber players in the team like he does with the Celtics and Tatum and Brown and White. But again, that plus minus is ludicrous. The only player with the higher plus, or excuse me, net rating, with the higher net rating among all of the players I considered for All Star reserves was Jared Allen at plus 23.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's why Porzingis is still he's scoring again about 20 points a game, 24% usage, 65% true shooting. It's helped because he can hit the three and he can play inside, get to the line. So his true shooting and effective field goal percentage are both higher. So yeah, I went with Porzingis over Brown for that reason.
All right. I respect it. I like it. I didn't pencil Porzingis in there, and maybe that's just me overlooking his impact on the team.
It's
And
also difficult when you have like the Celtics, who are clearly the best team in the East, and you've got these four candidates. You're not going to put all four on the team unless it's like a 70 win pace, right? So you have
I
to
don't
make
think.
some.
Yeah, no. It'd have to be a very tough case to make. I think the last team that got four All Stars in was probably the Atlanta Hawks back in what, like 2014, or was it 15? You're muted, by the way.
Sorry, I was going to say the Warriors since then with KD, Steph, Clay, and Draymond. I think.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right. You're right. I'm thinking of the Kyle Korver Hawks. That's what I was thinking. It's just it's crazy to me. Like, we're talking about these Celtics that could be in contention for the All Star nod, and one of the guys that you would think would be part of their big three, so to speak, was Drew Holiday, and unfortunately, he hasn't been playing the best over there in Boston.
Yeah, you know, he's playing fine, but he's not had the impact. Again, like I said before, Derek White seems to have had the impact and is playing the way that we've
Yeah,
expected and have seen Drew Holiday play for the last few years. I have Drew on my list because obviously I wanted to make sure, you know, who was actually deserving. And his numbers are his usage is only 17%. It's lower than Derek White, which is shocking to me because Drew,
crazy.
yeah, through his career has been he's been a starting point guard, ball handling lead guard for most of his career. Even playing with Giannis and Middleton, you know, he
Hmm.
had better numbers than that. He's only scoring 13 points a game. Again, Derek White's scoring more than him. He's a positive net rating, so he's doing well. I just think, and you know, I don't even think it's a bad. It could be just him, like the Celtics, giving him a little fewer responsibilities, both on defense and offense, since
Yeah.
they've got Tatum. Brown, Derek White, who can also handle the ball on offense and guard wings and ball handlers on defense, it
Hmm.
might be a good idea to kind of lessen Drew Holiday's workload to have him more, less
Healthier.
banged up in the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah, that's what you need him for. You need him 100% to
They
make
want
that.
a title run, right?
Yeah,
So
they want a title in general.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so I'll go over to a front court guy, and I'm going to leave this open. It's a toss up right now for me. I'm leaning towards Bam Adebayo, the Miami Heat, but I could also see someone making the case for Jimmy Butler just because it is Jimmy Butler. Overall, I'm leaning towards Bam Adebayo getting that front court nod for the Miami Heat because they deserve a representative because they lost Max Strus, they lost Gabe Vincent, they lost out on both Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal. You would have thought that would have derailed their season, and no, here they are, right in the thick of things. They're currently the seventh seed in the Eastern Conference, but they're only 2 games back of the sixth seed, just narrowly avoiding that play-in tournament. They got in there and they made the finals from an 8 seed. So it's kind of hard to really discredit or count out any Miami Heat team when they go in season in and out, always going ahead and proving people wrong. Also, they just made the trade for Terry Rozier too, so they're gonna have more offensive creation as well. Maybe that leads to Tyler Hero being traded because that might be a little redundancy there, but going back to the point, I think Bam Adebayo has been playing phenomenally to start the season, and I think he should be rewarded.
Yeah, I actually, so when I first wrote out, who I thought would be my reserves before I dug into it, I had Bam making it, definitely, like, as a definite. Now, I think you're right. Like, his defense is amazing, and he has a lot more offensive responsibilities, especially in that, like, kind of point guard limited offense that Miami has. He's a lot
Hmm.
more offensive responsibility than people might think. Um, in the end, it was kind of a tough decision. I chose Jimmy Butler over Bam because
Okay.
I only have one Miami Heat player making it on my team, kind of
Yeah.
with because I've got those three Celtics in there. That's a big part of that. And let's see. So with Bam versus Jimmy, the reason I went with Jimmy over Bam. So Jimmy's played fewer games, 32. Again, that's the fewest games I think on either conference from somebody I have in serious consideration for the All-Star team. But it's kind of like last year where I don't think Jimmy Butler didn't make the team. But by the
No,
end
it
of the
was Bam.
year, right, it was Bam. But by the end of the year, it looked ridiculous that Jimmy Butler was not an All-Star. Like, that he is an All-Star player, and we know he does take a slower start to the season. And you can't just rely on history. So I'm not just giving it to them based on history. Looking at their effect on the court while they've been on the court, and remember, like you said, the Miami Heat they're above the Bulls. They're in the play-in tournament, but they're not doing great. They've had a bit of a losing stretch here.
Hmm.
They have a lower record, and if you're going to pick a Heat player, I'm going to pick the one who's impacted winning a bit more. It's a very tough call, but net rating wise, Jimmy Butler is a plus 11 in his minutes,
Hmm.
and Bam Adebayo has been a plus 2. Again, that's not the end all be all. A lot of that depends on who's on the court with you, who you're
Hmm.
facing, all kinds of ups and downs throughout the season, right? But with the Heat's record where it's at, and Butler being a plus 11, now their usage is very similar. Butler's at about 25, Bam's at about 26. Butler's scoring, Jimmy's scoring 21 points a game. Bam's like a few ticks behind that at 20.7.
Hmm.
But shooting wise, Jimmy Butler's true shooting percentage is 62.3%. I think this might have been what clinched it for me. Again, that's taking into account his ability to get to the line and hit free throws and the rate that he hits free throws at, along
Yeah.
with his field goal percentage. That's the
Okay.
highest true shooting percentage of any of these players. I have 5, 10, 17 players that I had in consideration statistically for the reserves. I'm not even counting the starters. Among those 17 players of all positions, Jimmy Butler has the highest true shooting percentage. So that's big. I mean, to me, Bam's is okay, but for a front court player, 56.4 is actually pretty low. Um, Overall, they're very similar. They're going to have similar impacts on winning. But I think Jimmy Butler, especially with how last year went, and given
Hmm.
his track record and given what we're seeing statistically, his impact so far in winning, I gave him the nod over Bam based on that.
All right, fair. I mean, you might have swayed me one way or another. I'll lock in my final locks for sure. Okay, I'll go with my final front court guy, and you kind of have to reward the Orlando Magic because they are playing very well. And I think there's one guy that really deserves that nod, and I'm giving it to Paulo Banchero, the second year man. God, I love this man. He's such a fun player to
So fun to
watch.
watch, man.
Dude,
Yeah,
he's so fun to fucking watch. But yeah, I think he's going to get his first All Star nod. I think he truly has earned it and deserves it. The Orlando Magic are playing far better than anyone could have anticipated. I think they're a little bit of ahead of schedule, and that's mostly due to Paulo Banchero just being.
definitely. I think like they've fallen back a bit. Like if the Bulls weren't such trash, they probably would have caught him by now. They're just a
Yeah.
couple games ahead of the Bulls in the standings, but still, that's such a huge leap. And like you said, they've got a lot of good players with Franz Wagner and like just up and down their roster, but it's mainly Paolo. Paolo's the main key here.
100%. So do you have Paulo as well on your team?
No, again, a player I thought I would when I first wrote him out. I had Bam and Paolo over Jared Allen and Butler. Um, so again, it was a tough call. So we're looking at forwards. My final forward spot then, and this is what edges out Paolo for me,
Mm-hmm.
went to Jared Allen
Okay.
because especially like you're right, Orlando started the year amazingly well, and Cleveland was kind of about middle of the pack, maybe even a little behind where you expected. But if you haven't been paying attention for the past month, Cleveland has just kept winning, and Orlando's been about a 500-ish team. Cleveland is actually, I think they just leapfrogged Philadelphia in the standings. Let's see. Yep, they're technically fourth.
Yeah,
They're like
therefore.
tied essentially, like for fourth place with Philly. So they've climbed from basically ninth, where the Bulls are now, all the way up to fourth. And that was basically, again, everybody's been out injured. And Jared Allen is injured, but just now got injured. Up
Mm-hmm.
until now, it has basically just been Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell and whoever can play that night from the reserves. So I think a big amount of credit goes to him. Looking at their numbers, I think it's just a little early for Paolo. Like for me, if you're a first-time All-Star, you have
Yeah.
to either like obliterate the field or you have to keep it up for more than just a few months, right? You have to keep it up for the year. And that's the only reason I'm going to say Paolo going to have to wait till next year for me. Because looking at Jared Allen's performance and Paolo's performance, Paolo, great usage percentage. Again, Orlando's offense basically runs through him, 30.4% usage. That's basically, lead guard level usage percentage. And he's scoring 23 points a game. His shooting is all right, like overall, for a wing player. But
Right.
-6 net rating overall. Orlando slipped in the standings. Cleveland has far surpassed them in the standings. They're several games ahead of them now. Again, they're in fourth. They're vying for home court advantage, whereas Orlando's playing for a play-in game. And Jared Allen's, let's look at his numbers. Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. I brought this up earlier. Of those 17 players I mentioned, the net rating I was wowing about, Jimmy Butler at +11, Derek
Mm-hmm.
White at +10, Jared Allen in 39 games, +23.
Oh,
His team is 23 points better while he's on the floor per 100 possessions. That's incredible. His defensive impact is off the charts, and that's still while contributing 15 points a game on amazing percentages again, because he's mostly going around the rim. 68% true shooting. He's getting fouls as well. 65% effective field goal percentage. So he's sticking to his lane of shots. He's not really shooting from the
right.
perimeter or shooting a very high amount, but he's scoring 15 points a game on nearly 70% like true shooting percentage, +23 while he's on the floor. That's why I went with him.
Okay. So your seven reserves. Your guards are Brunson and Maxey.
Yep.
You have Porzingis, Jared Allen, and Jimmy Butler as your front court guys.
Yep.
And then your wild cards are Derek White and Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, I had to go with the two guards in this case, just
Yeah.
based on how good they've been.
No, that's a solid list. So the ones I agree with you for sure are Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Tyrese Maxey, and you talked me into Jimmy. I was like
Jimmy
I
over
said,
Bam. It's close, man.
it's
Yeah.
close because I wanted to give it a Bam because he has earned it, especially to start off the season. But I'm gonna give it a Jimmy because he is the All Star over there. We disagree on Porzingis and White. I don't have either of them there. Instead, I have Jalen Brown and The one guy that I had that you didn't was Bankero. In my
Yeah,
final spot, this is a toss up because there are a few factors to consider here because you got guys obviously like Derek White, Porzingis from the Boston Celtics that are playing phenomenally. You have obviously names of guys that have been all stars in the past, such as a Trey Young or DeMar DeRozan. Maybe of a younger talent like a Mikal Bridges or a Scotty Barnes, but they're lower in the standings for their
yeah.
respective teams. You have guys like Julius Randle, who's been an All Star as well. That I felt stole the only Knicks All Star spot for his teammate last year, even though Brunson should have got it in there. I think my final reserve spot, I've talked myself into it being Jared Allen, and I think he deserves it for all the things you've mentioned previously already.
Yeah.
His defense, his impact on winning is
I mean, haven't
undeniable.
you been? I was shocked when Cleveland. I mean, it was one thing for them to beat the Bulls, who are consistently disappointing, and
Right.
but then they've beaten anybody they've played. Like they just keep winning, and they've had player after player after player out of their roster, and it's just again Mitchell and Allen. It's amazing. I've been shocked by how good they've been.
No, they're clearly the two best players on that Cavs roster. So I have two Cavaliers in Mitchell and Allen. So do you. We have one Miami Heat player between the two of us and Jimmy Butler. We have one New York Knick, Jalen Brunson. I only have one Boston Celtic versus your three. We
Yeah.
both got Maxi, and I think Paulo gets it. Like I think Paulo
That's
gets it.
fair. That's fair. I understand. I just think like again, to me, it's too early for him. I do like. First of all, he's going to be fun to watch in the All Star game,
Hmm.
and
For
that's
sure.
a big consideration, man. You want some players in the All Star game who you want to see play on the court with those stars.
I'll say this: the Bulls homer in me feels like we have to kind of give a quick shout out to Kobe White. He's been playing phenomenally,
Well, if do
almost
you
at
want to
an
let
all-star
me?
level.
I have a little bit. If you want to, I can make some points here. If I can run through them for like all the players I considered, and I didn't seriously consider a Bull, but I listed them in my breakdown because I knew we'd have to talk about it being
How
Chicago
many
home.
Bulls did you list?
I just two, and so if you want me to run through like my breakdown of the players who were considered but left out and why, before we get to the Bulls, I'll just quickly mention, Trey Young, who was leading like the starting vote for a while. He was up there, but in the end, Atlanta's terrible. His
Yeah,
usage percentage is very high, 31.3. He's still scoring 27 points a game, so he's scoring offensively, but he's not doing much else to lead his team. His net rating's a -4. He's been awful defensively if you consider how good like his scoring has been, and he hasn't been, really creating offense well enough for the Hawks. So that's why I left him off, especially with like the guards that we just mentioned, like the competition he has. That's
yeah.
pretty tough. I considered some players you mentioned, Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam. You might be surprised to learn. These guys were on the same team for a while, and Scotty Barnes is the guy everybody's high on,
Hmm.
obviously for his future. But even this year, it felt like people were considering Barnes to be the better player.
I didn't actually consider Pascal Siakam. I forgot that he's done Eastern
Well,
Conference.
that's why I wanted to. I was listing out Barnes's numbers. I'm like, let me compare him to Siakam. They were on the same team up until just a week or so ago. So Siakam and Barnes on the same team most of this time. Usage percentage almost exactly the same. They each about 25%, about a quarter of their team's offense goes through them. Points per game, Siakam's higher at 22, Scotty's at 20. True shooting percentage, Siakam is better than Scotty, 60.3 versus 57.1. The way people have talked about Pascal, you would think he's having a terrible year. He's actually shooting the ball better, scoring more, and having a better impact than Scotty has.
You know what? You just switched my pick based
Yeah.
on how everything is going to play out. How I think the coaches are going to vote. I'm taking Jared Allen out, and I'm putting Pascal Siakam in.
Surprising.
Yeah.
I was not trying to sway you, but yeah,
No.
sometimes the numbers when it's close can like help clarify what you're thinking, and
Yeah.
it's a big reason why I like to list them out. Because I like to list out stuff that, I understand how the stat is working, so I know like what it's saying. But B,
Right.
I pick some stats like win shares just to look at to be like, is there something I'm missing? Is somebody's win share is really high? And then I'll look closer at the stats to be like, is there a reason? Like maybe I didn't consider this person and I should.
Hmm.
Again, Siakam has more win shares than Scotty Barnes, more win shares than Bankero, almost doubles. So, but yeah, Siakam, Barnes, I left them off again. Their numbers are fine, but they don't compare to some of the people we were
Yeah.
talked about. And then the last two are the Bulls here. It's Demar and Kobe.
Right.
Now, we've talked about, obviously there's record and all of that, but let's look at the numbers I was considering for advanced stats and even points per game. DeMar's down to 22 points a game. Kobe's up to 18.7 for his career, but they've fluctuated throughout the year. Their true shooting percentages are okay, but they don't stack up to those best guards. Um, they're I mean, Kobe's actually is approaching them because of the rate he's converting his threes. He's at 58% true shooting, but he's only at 22% usage. Like as a lead guard, that's very low. Like he just hasn't, not enough of the offense has gone through him. His overall net rating is still a -5. That's probably because of how bad the Bulls were to start the year, especially because Kobe started slow. DeMar's overall net rating is a +2. None of their stats jump out to me. They're all just fine. And given the Bulls' record and the fact that their stats don't outdo any of the other players we were considering, that's why I didn't seriously consider them.
Yeah. No, and then obviously, like the more we get in, just kind of like as a legacy vote, to be honest. But let's move on to the Western Conference. There's a few that I feel like are locks for sure. I'm going to list the name. We're going to treat this one differently because this was a bloodbath. I'm going to list the name, and you're going to tell me if this person was a lock for you.
Dude, this was brutal.
Okay.
Brutal.
So, you know what? We'll do it this way. I'm going to list the team. Minnesota Timberwolves, how many All-Stars do you have in the reserves? I have one lock and one that I'm teetering on.
So I would say the same. One lock and one teeter, basically, one on the edge. In the end, I dropped the players I was having on that edge for in favor of some others. So I really only have one Timberwolf.
Same. I think we both can agree that it's Anthony Edwards.
Yep, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that dude, another fun player to watch. Like he's been fantastic. He's been phenomenal. He has moments where he looks like Kobe as well.
He's been, yeah, and again with Minnesota winning, they do have the number one defense, but their offense is essentially an Anthony Edwards offense, with some hat tips to Cat that we'll get to. But you know what's funny is among all the reserve guards, he was the one I wrote down like no doubt about it lock, even over guys like Steph and Booker.
Oh, 100%. Because he's been that great. He's been that great this season. Number one team in the Western Conference. You got to have at least one player off of there. And kind of look at it like you can make a case for Gobert because he's been making an impact defensively as well. Karl-Anthony Towns, legacy vote. He's been there, done that in the All-Star game. Obviously, he is a scoring option for them. But the engine that makes that Minnesota team work is Anthony Edwards. I think this is his team.
On that note, his usage percentage is 32.5. That's very, very high. That's like elite player, usage percentage. That's what Steph and Booker and these guys get. And that is the highest usage of any of the, let's see, in the West, I actually considered 21 total players for these 7 spots. And that's his usage is the highest of all of them for,
3 times as many players as can make the
right.
make the game.
That can actually make the team, right?
Crazy. Okay. So there's 2 teams next in the standings. You have the Denver Nuggets at number 2. You have the Oklahoma City Thunder at number 3. I don't have another player from that team. I only have Shea, who was voted in as a starter, and Nikola Jokic that was voted in as a starter as well. The only one for me that felt like had a considerable chance to make a reserve was Jamal Murray for the Denver Nuggets. But I feel like that really would only be kind of like, hey, they won the champion. They're the defending champions.
And he was awesome in the playoffs. Like
he was fantastic.
Phenomenal.
But in the end, I didn't choose anyone from either the Nuggets or the Thunder. How about you?
Same. The Thunder guys, Chet and Jalen Williams. It's similar to Paolo for me, where you've only had a little bit of track record here. You need a longer track record, especially if you're not like blowing the other players out of the water with your stats. Then to me, you need a bit of a higher track record there. So that's why you're right. No additional. And again, Jamal Murray. What's funny is I initially listed the same amount of West players to consider as East. And then I got to the end, I'm like, holy crap, I totally forgot about like some of these players when I was looking.
Dude, same.
Yeah, so I'm like, let me quickly jot down Jamal Murray. I'll give him a little bit of love, 28% usage, +3 net rating. He's playing well, but when we get to the other guards and even the forwards, like it's a ridiculously good year for top talent in the
It
West.
is. Not to backtrack a little, but did you have Anthony Edwards listed as a guard or as a front court?
Guard.
Okay, same. Okay, same. So we both got Edwards as one of our guards. We don't have any following all stars for Denver and Oklahoma City. Let's just go down the list this way. The LA Clippers at number 4. Did you have one all star, two all stars? How many did you have, and who did you pick ultimately?
2 Clippers, and they were the next after Anthony was Anthony Edwards. Ant was a clear lock. Like the next 2 closest to clear locks for me, and they weren't like total locks like Ant just because of the depth at forward.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to it, but I had Kawhi and PG both in there.
Me too. Same thing. You can make a case for Harden if you wanted to, but he's not an all star.
Okay, so if obviously with what went on in the offseason at the beginning of this year, like we would not want to put Harden on the team. But like you said, I had to consider him at least just to look at him. Dude, it's insane. He has a plus 12 net rating. His true shooting percentage is 63.6. Like only Steph and Booker among guards in the West have a 60+% true shooting percentage. It's insanely high. Plus 10.7 plus minus. If you only remember from when Harden first got traded to the Clippers and they struggled, then you've not paid attention the last month when they've just been rolling off win after win and long win streaks. Because they are now, let's see, where are they?
They're number 4. Yeah, they're 4th. They're only half a game back from the Thunder for the 3rd seed, and they're a full game back from the Denver Nuggets for the number 2 seed. And they're, like I said, a game and a half. That's a lot.
They could easily be in
not
first.
a lot. They could easily be the first by the time the All-Star game.
By the All-Star game. That's insane.
Yes.
That's how good they've been. And that's not like, oh, they're right in the middle of it. No, the Kings are behind them, a full 3.5 games behind them. So
exactly. So actually, no, they're actually a full 4 games behind them.
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't. Might have pulled up the records earlier. So that's insane.
I just got the updated standings at the moment. So so I had Kawhi Leonard as one of my locks as well. I was like, do I put in PG? Do I put in Anthony Davis at the end? I had PG for sure in there. Let's go on to the next team on the standings. We just mentioned them, the Sacramento Kings. Do you have them having one All-Star, 2 All-Stars, or did you have to like split the wishbone and make a tough choice here?
So this is one of the toughest of choices. I was kind of hoping we'd get to them last.
Okay, let's save it. Let's
save the Kings.
Okay. Let's move on to the number 16. It's 6th team on the Western Conference standing, the Phoenix Suns. I got Devin Booker. Do you?
Yep. And again, it was a very hard call, but if first of all, the Suns have also been winning lately, so they've moved up the standings. They're barely behind Sacramento. They're right there. So they've moved from beyond the like play-in mix with the Lakers all the way up to, now they're legitimate battle for maybe even home court at some point. So Devin Booker. Now again, Kevin Durant is
Did you have him as your other guard or as a wild card?
I wound up going so the only guard lock I had was Edwards, and everybody else I was kind of like, oh my god, what do I do? It's when we get to them. So I guess you can say he's my other guard. So we'll just say he's my other guard.
Okay, so he's my other guard as well. I'll go with that as well.
But let me quickly say, like KD's the starter, right? And everybody was like, oh yeah, that's a well-deserved starting nod for KD. Booker's played 38 games, so he's not played, fewer than many of these players. He's playing point guard much of the time, which is not what Kevin Durant is doing. So he's got the ball handling and playmaking responsibilities. You believe it or not, when I looked at the numbers, he has a higher usage percentage. Okay, not surprising because he has the ball more often than KD. Yeah. He's also scoring more points per game than KD. That's amazing to me. He's scoring 28.4 points per game, barely more than KD, but more, at 31.3% usage, plus 5 net rating when he's on the floor, 61.8% true shooting. When I looked at the numbers, I when we went into it, I was not sure if Booker was an all-star. When I looked at the numbers, he's a no-doubter. You just
for sure. Okay, so I'm gonna list off a few teams here that we can just kind of like scratch off. I feel like, San Antonio Spurs, Portland Trail Blazers, Memphis Grizzlies, Houston Rockets, and Dallas Mavericks are all teams that I don't think are going to have a representation in the All-Star game unless they've already had a starter.
Well, Dallas has Luka, but yeah.
Well, aside from Luka being the starter, now we get some teams that have contenders.
Quickly though, I'll mention I considered players because again, I got a fucking list of like 20 plus players
Oh
right here.
yeah.
I broke down. So I considered players from even the Grizzlies. I had Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bain. I
Well,
considered
Desmond Bain
Kyrie.
is hurt, isn't he?
He's hurt right now, but I'm like, let me see his numbers and how many games he's played because he's played 37 games. So I'm like, all right, we'll see. I considered him, Jaren Jackson Jr. I considered from the Rockets, Alperen Şengün. I even considered Wemby
Yes.
just to throw it in there. Like, let's see how his numbers stack up. And unfortunately, these guys like they're having good years. They're not comparable to the others. There's none of their stats stick out. In any given, they stick out for being a good player, but not compared to the other all stars that we're considering on the list here. Not Kyrie, not Şengün, not Wemby, not Jaren Jackson Jr. Or Desmond Bain, both of whom have really high usage percentages. So hopefully that'll help them next year when Ja Morant is back and Steven
Hmm.
Adams is back. But right now, they're just not converting. Their percentages are lower. Their net ratings are low. Their teams aren't winning. So Alperen Şengün was maybe the closest of all of those that to
He
making the team.
definitely was for me. Ultimately, he lost out to even guys like Larry Markkinen, who isn't
Yes,
having the best of seasons compared to last year, but he is still performing at a level that we thought there might be a drop off. We thought it could be just a one time thing, but no, Larry Markkinen is performing well. You also have the New Orleans Pelicans, who are above all those teams we just mentioned, with the exception of the Dallas Mavericks. However, I don't think any one of those guys on the Pelicans really are making me feel like, oh, they're all-star level material, especially Zion and Brandon Ingram. I mean, I just don't think they're having just the best of season,
right.
which I think like I ultimately kind of went with some safe choices because despite their team struggles and they're still playing well, and with two spots, I'm going to go back to back here. Stephen Curry and Anthony Davis are getting two spots for me as well.
I have Steph and AD in there as well. By the way, the three guys I totally forgot about that N added in at the end just to quickly look at
Mhm.
were one was Jamal Murray, who I mentioned. The
Yes.
other two were the Pelicans because I looked at the standings. I'm like, oh yeah, New Orleans. So let's look how Zion and Ingram, Brandon Ingram stack up. Again, just like the other guys I mentioned from the Rockets and Mavericks and Grizzlies, they're having okay years, but they do not stack up
No.
either in plus minus, in true shooting, in their effective field goal, in their usage. None of them really compare. Zion is the closest at like having a +4 net rating with 29% usage. So he's having a good year, but just overall numbers with your impact in the other statistical areas and on defense, it doesn't stack up to the guys we're
For sure.
considering. And going on to Steph and AD, that was it was actually surprising. For a minute, I thought about like, does Steph not make this team? Does Steph Curry not
No, I
make my
think
All
Steph
Star
makes
team?
the All Star game.
Well, that's what it came down to, man. In the end, who's the better player? And even right now, Steph Curry's scoring 27 and a half points per game on 31% usage, 63% true shooting. Again, ridiculous if you've heard me say the true shooting numbers, especially for guards. He has even like a net rating at basically zero, which considering like how badly the Warriors have been doing is pretty remarkable considering who they've had on the floor with
Yeah.
him. So yeah, Steph and AD, by the way. So LeBron, his teammate, is a starter, and deservedly, I think. Like I would have made an argument for Kawhi over him, but I think LeBron still deserves it.
Right.
LeBron versus AD. Let's break it down for these teammates, just like I did for the Celtics and Clippers guys. AD is a +13 net rating when he's on the floor. LeBron is a +1. Their points per game, true shooting, effective field goal percentages are all just about equal. LeBron is a bit higher usage at 29.6, AD's at 27, basically. And that, to me, like considering AD's defensive impact and how much better his net rating is than LeBron's, I think he definitely also deserves to make the team. Plus 13
100%.
is great.
Yeah. And then, I mean, got to give them a little bit of a nod. They're the inaugural playing tournament champions.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
you got to give them both. Um, the final spot here, I think we both agree that it's going to be a Sacramento King. We just haven't announced who it's going to be. Obviously, I think the two contenders here is no doubt either a toss up between De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis has made it in the past. He's a former All Star. I don't believe. Wait, De'Aaron Fox made it last year as a first time
Yeah,
All Star.
yeah.
Only one of them will make it this year, I believe. Who did
Yes.
you ultimately went with and
This is
why?
so tough. So just to recap real quick, we've both got Anthony Edwards,
Correct.
Kawhi, Paul
PG,
George, Anthony
Booker.
Davis, Steph Curry, and Devin Booker, right?
Yeah.
So that leaves one fucking spot, man. And I'm looking at this and it's ridiculous. I want to give it to Lauri Markkanen. Like you said, the Jazz
Yeah.
have been rising. His year has been, again, it's a great year. He has a plus 12 net rating, true shooting of 64.1. He's the main reason they've climbed the standings from like a lottery team to back into the play-in, playoff mix. He's scoring 23 and a half points per game, 25% usage. But then you look at the Kings, man, and you got De'Aaron Fox, who I thought when I wrote it down, I thought he was going to be a lock. It's just the other guards were so damn good.
Yeah.
And you've got Sabonis. So we're looking at Fox and Sabonis. So the way I wrote it out on my picks, I still haven't made my final decision. I've got my last spot. I've got Lowry, Domantas Sabonis, and De'Aaron Fox all written down with me going with question marks next to them. Like which one of these guys? Only one of these guys can make it in our picks here. So let's look at the numbers. De'Aaron Fox.
Before you announce your,
Yeah.
go ahead, do look at the numbers. But before you announce your final one, just like
Yeah.
we'll do a little countdown.
I'll throw it back to you too, and then you can count it down because I'm still not sure. This is going to help me make my decision right here.
All right,
All
go
right.
ahead.
De'Aaron Fox, let's see, he's played 39 games, so he's played plenty. His usage rate over 30%, 31.4. So that's on, just it's same as basically Steph. Booker barely behind Anthony Edwards, scoring 27 and a half points per game. So again, same as Steph, barely behind Booker. 58% true shooting is a bit like that's actually really good, but just based on the other guards, it's behind all the others. Same with this. Obviously, if his true shooting is back that way, then his effective field goal is the same, 54. So that's not bad, but it's behind even Booker and
Yeah.
only ahead of Ant. So going to his net rating, he's a -2 overall in his net rating overall on the floor, accounting for offense, defense, and his minutes. And again, that's not the end all be all. It's just one of the many things we're looking at. And it helps when you're looking at players in the same team. So
Yeah.
we're looking at Sabonis now. He's got a lower usage, 22.3, so the ball's in Fox's hands more obviously as the point guard, but Sabonis is a big playmaking responsibility, scoring about 20 points a game. His true shooting percentage is awesome, 65.7. Again, he's not having to force as many shots as Fox, so he gets a little bit of a break there. But again, you got to give him credit for shooting the ball well and picking good shots to take, which is what this, and getting the line, which is what all of this includes. 65.7% true shooting is great. His net rating while he's on the floor is a +13. So Lowry is a +12. So that's a legit like that's a tough call.
They're neck and neck. They're neck and neck.
They're neck and neck. So it's for me, it's got to be between Fox, Sabonis, and Lowry. I think.
Are you talking yourself out of a Sacramento King and go with Lauri Markkanen?
No, I think I talked myself into Sabonis over Fox.
Okay. Well.
So yeah, Domantas Sabonis, I think. Sorry, I was going to do the countdown, but when you said that, I just made my decision. I was like, all right.
No, that's all right. I've been leaning more towards De'Aaron Fox this whole time.
Yeah.
And I want to make a case for Sabonis because I feel like he impacts winning for them in so many different aspects of the game. But yeah, at the end, I just kind of ended up going with De'Aaron Fox in terms of who I thought was going to make it. So
yeah,
I don't have any advanced stats to throw your way. I just kind of went with like a gut feeling, and my gut feeling had De'Aaron Fox. So we agreed on almost all 7 reserves,
which is
reserves.
Actually amazing in the West. Like
we were talking about how it was a bloodbath.
It was a bloodbath, though, man. This took me so long. Look at the freaking players I've got listed here. Look at all that. That's a lot. That's incredible. Like I considered a full 20 plus players for these 7 spots, man.
No, yeah, man. It's honestly crazy. We spent longer on the East reserves and we had more of a back and forth there. And again, we thought it was going to be even
Dude,
longer.
I didn't even mention Karl Anthony Towns. Rudy Gobert is a +21 net rating. Like +21.
Yeah.
I think to me, Rudy Gobert should be an all-star. They should just move him to the East. Like honestly, if they were in the East, Rudy Gobert to me as the leader of the number 1 defense with a +21 net rating and still like contributing on offense, I would give him a spot on the East team. But it's just the West is ridiculous this year.
I mean, a lot of people have been like making the case that, especially with the format that was where they were just like picking teams and they have team captains, team LeBron versus team whoever, that it should have been just like the top 24 players of each conference making it into the All-Star
Yeah.
game and kind of going from there. However, this year they're actually going to go back to the West versus East format, so there
Yeah,
won't
first
be a
time.
draft.
Wow.
Yeah, first time in a while. Ultimately, like I said, I'm going with the Aaron Fox. Rudy Gobert deserves it. Demontis Sabonis deserves it. Lauren Marketing deserves it. Tough,
Yeah.
tough,
I mean,
tough.
Carl Anthony Town, everybody up and down the list. There's a
Yeah.
lot of great players on here.
But yeah, with that being said, Bosh, why don't you let people know where they can follow you, talk hoops with you on social media, anything else you want to plug and shout out?
Yeah, you can follow me on Blue Sky. I'm at systemlords.bsky.social. Of course, on Instagram at systemlord without the E, so SYSTMLORD. And as always, we've actually had, if anybody does check out the Chi-Care links on Instagram, you can
Yeah,
follow them on Facebook, a number of places, providing, started out just food and then clothing, and now it's just a whole vast array of supplies, winter weather gear, clothing, toiletries, anything, snack packs, meals, warm, fresh meals to the homeless, taking them where they live, and then even for the incoming migrant population that has been, a big talking point here. We've had a lot of volunteers. There was a big like snack packing drive that they had the other day that a lot of people showed up to just to pack. Different snacks into packs to hand out. So it's been a really
yeah,
good year with a lot of volunteers. But of course, the need is great. Whether it's money, time, however you want to do it, spreading the word, please check out Chi-Care, CHI-CARE.org, or check out their Instagram page or follow them on Facebook.
for sure, for sure. As for me, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SESVince. Link to in my bio takes you to everything that we have in the archives for Straight Talk and everything else. Check out the YouTube, youtube.com/SESVince. Check it out. That's where we'll be doing a lot of our basketball content video-wise going forward. So go ahead and check that out for sure. But with that being said, these are all-star reserves. We'll see how many we get right. Tune in. Let us know who you thought
I think the
should
term
have
is
been.
we'll see how many they get right. We obviously have it right. And then,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Let's see if they get it as close to how we had it. But
right.
yeah, let us know who you think. Hit us up on socials. And yeah, we're out of here, y'all.
Peace. Cool.
Cool.